the early summer of 1161. The mighty Latin king of Jerusalem, Baldwin III, stands as godfather to his newborn nephew of the same name. A court member asks him what present he intends to give to his godchild. "The kingdom of Jerusalem," he responds, with a peal of laughter. As everyone laughed at the joke at the time, they were unaware that it was the prophecy of a glorious and tragic story about the king who had to fight the invaders, his allies, and his illness in order to maintain his throne. Born in 1166, Baldwin was the younger of two children born to Amalric, the ruler of Jaffa, and Agnes of Courtenay. Sibylla, his older sister, was 2 years older than him. Baldwin hailed from the renowned house of Anjou, a Frankish lineage that produced numerous significant European leaders. His uncle was the King of Jerusalem, and his grandfather, Fulk V of Anjou, held the titles of both King of Jerusalem and Court of Anjou. Remarkably, Baldwin's half-first cousins, connected through his grandfather, included Henry II, the King of England, and Philip of Alsace, the ruler of Flanders. At Baldwin's birth, the thought of him one day wearing the crown was far-fetched, despite his father, Amalric, being next in line for the Jerusalem throne. After all, his uncle Baldwin III was a young ruler expected to produce heirs. However, fate began weaving its intricate patterns early in Baldwin's life. When he was just 2, his uncle, the reigning king, died suddenly, leaving no heirs. Amalric ascended to the throne, and young Baldwin found himself as the heir apparent. Some might call it a stroke of luck, but this new status came at a high cost for Baldwin. The High Court of Jerusalem, akin to a feudal council, voiced strong opposition to Agnes, Amalric's wife, becoming their future queen, wary of her potential sway and patronage. When Amalric was forced to choose between his throne and his wife, he chose power. The Patriarch of Jerusalem, Almeric of Nesle, dissolved the marriage, claiming they were related closer than what was permissible. However, their children were recognized as legitimate. Amalric later wed Maria Komnena, the grandniece of the Byzantine Emperor Manuel I Komnenos, and they had a daughter named Isabella. Baldwin, at just 2 years old, faced the departure of his mother, Agnes, who remarried Hugh of Ibelin and only saw her son at public events alongside her husband. Soon, his sister Sibylla was sent to the Bethany convent near Jerusalem to be raised by their aunt, the abbess. With Alaric engrossed in his kingly responsibilities, Baldwin was virtually raised without a family. Amalric entrusted Baldwin's education to William of Tyre, one of the kingdom's most learned men. Prior to his return to Jerusalem, William had spent 20 years journeying through Europe, attending top universities and studying liberal arts and canon law. Baldwin couldn't have asked for a better mentor, whose guidance significantly shaped him as a future leader. Besides being a key figure in Baldwin's upbringing, it was William of Tyre who had noticed the boy's peculiar illness, documented in his chronicles. While he was staying with me, it happened that, as he was playing with some boys of noble birth who were with him, and they were pinching each other on the arms and hands with their nails, as children often do when playing together, the others cried out when they were hurt, whereas he bore it all with great patience, like one who is used to pain, although his friends did not spare him in any way. Then I began to feel uncertain in my mind, recalling the words of the wise man who said, "It is a certainty that a limb which is without feeling is not conducive to health, and that a sick man who does not feel himself to be so incurs great danger." Upon hearing about Baldwin's condition, King Amalric called upon the top Arab physicians to treat his son. Various remedies, from ointments and poultices to herbs and charms, were employed. Regrettably, Baldwin was grappling with a disease deemed incurable during the Middle Ages, leprosy, more specifically, lepromatous leprosy. This severe variant gnaws at the body's internal organs, bones, joints, and marrow, leading to disfigurement and a loss of sensation in the fingers and toes. All of this transpired when Baldwin was merely 9 years old. Although the royal doctors suspected leprosy, the absence of visible symptoms caused them to hesitate before diagnosing it. After all, Baldwin was to be a king, and a confirmed diagnosis of leprosy would inevitably cast a stigma on him. In the Middle Ages, leprosy was widely believed to be divine retribution and provoked abject fear. Those afflicted were considered living dead. Symbolic funerals were held for them, and their estates were transferred to their relatives. Given the assumption of its high contagiousness, lepers were quarantined from healthy individuals. They were required to cover their sores with bandages and use a bell as a warning of their approach. In the Kingdom of Jerusalem, a night order for lepers existed, the Order of St. Lazarus of Jerusalem, also known as the Leper Brothers of Jerusalem, or Lazarists. Established by Crusaders in the early 12th century, it comprised knights affected by leprosy who continued to fight until unable. Furthermore, they managed several leper hospitals within the kingdom. Had Baldwin's leprosy been identified at its initial signs, he would have been relegated to this order, ruling out his succession to the throne. Something Almeric desperately wanted to avoid until he found a potential son-in-law replacement. As the years wore on, Baldwin's condition worsened, yet his upbringing continued unabated, as if he were healthy. He was tutored in governance and chivalry. Despite his disability, Baldwin strived to compensate. He became adept at riding a horse, using only his legs due to the numbness in one hand and the need to wield a weapon in the other. Aware he couldn't be the king his forebears were, Baldwin refrained from self-pity. According to William of Tyre, who knew Baldwin pretty well, he made good progress in his studies, and as time passed, he grew up full of hope and developed his natural abilities. He was a good-looking child for his age, and more skilled than men who were older than himself in controlling horses and riding them at a gallop. He had an excellent memory, and he loved listening to stories. He was inclined to be thrifty, but he always remembered the good things that people had done for him, and the bad things as well. He was very like his father. Not only did they look alike, but they were of similar build. King Amalric, following his predecessor's trend, died young in July 1174 from dysentery. With his sister Sibylla still unbetrothed, Baldwin, despite the undiagnosed but widely known leprosy, became the prime contender for the throne. The High Court debated for 3 days, grappling with choosing a leper king or a politically unsuitable one. Ultimately, they selected 13-year-old Baldwin, planning to find Sibylla a suitable husband by the time Baldwin reached the majority. Thus, Baldwin IV was crowned king on July 15, 1174, marking the 75th anniversary of Jerusalem's capture by the First Crusade. The issue of regency arose with Baldwin's ascension. Initially offered to Miles of Plancy, it swiftly shifted to Baldwin's cousin, Raymond III of Tripoli, due to Plancy's leadership failures. Raymond, being the closest kinsman and the most influential vassal, was approved by the High Court. At 13, Baldwin's apparent leprosy in youth made him seem unfit for royal duties. His disease progressed, leaving visible damage and concern amongst his people. But he wasn't ostracized. Instead, everyone acted as if he was healthy. The High Court, however, prioritized securing a suitable husband for Sibylla, settling on William of Montferrat, a noble and close ties to prominent European rulers. In 1176, Baldwin IV came of age to officially rule. Although rumors suggest he offered to abdicate in favor of his new brother-in-law, no immediate change to the throne occurred. Aware of his limitations and the impending threat of the powerful Sultan Saladin of Egypt and Syria encircling the Crusaders' states, Baldwin took decisive action. With no time to lose, King Baldwin assembled his council and planned an invasion of Egypt, aiming to strike at Saladin's southern territories while he was occupied in the north. For this endeavor, he secured assistance from Byzantine Emperor Manuel, financial support from his cousin Henry II of England, and military aid from his cousin Philip of Flanders. However, in a cruel twist of fate, Baldwin's prospective heir, William Longsword, succumbed to malaria during the preparations for the campaign in June 1177, leaving a pregnant Sibylla behind. Baldwin too contracted malaria, but miraculously, he survived despite his precarious health condition. Due to discord between the Byzantines and Baldwin's vassals, the planned Egyptian campaign never got off the ground. Consequently, the war came to Baldwin's doorstep as Saladin marched towards Jerusalem with Philip of Flanders and Raymond of Tripoli engaged in battles in Syria. Challenging the formidable Saladin in battle was an uphill task for any monarch, let alone the ailing leper king, Baldwin. Nonetheless, this was the perfect opportunity for Baldwin to demonstrate his commitment to his royal duties, despite his condition. Recovering from malaria, everyone anticipated that he would delegate military duties to his new regent, Reynold of Chatillon. To their surprise, Baldwin chose to join his warriors on the battlefield, summoning his vassals and marching towards Ascalon. Since Baldwin and Reynold commanded a force significantly smaller than Saladin's, they chose to stay within Ascalon's fortified walls, letting Saladin advance towards Jerusalem. As Saladin's forces spread out to plunder surrounding towns en route to the capital, Baldwin spotted an opportunity to strike. Together with the Templars and Reynold, he launched a surprise attack on Saladin. They encountered his army on November 25, 1177, at Montgisard. Even though Saladin's soldiers were scattered, he still had more soldiers than Franks and Templars. However, Baldwin's surprise factor turned the tide. Before Saladin could rally his troops, Reynold led a swift cavalry charge, striking at the heart of Saladin's army. Saladin narrowly escaped death as his forces retreated in disarray. The scattered troops of Saladin were easily hunted down and defeated. The Battle of Montgisard ended with a resounding victory for the Franks. Saladin, vanquished, was forced to retreat to Cairo. The Leper King, who had courageously ridden alongside his knights, emerged from the battle with his reputation enhanced, proving his worthiness as a king despite his physical afflictions. The Leper King didn't allow himself to be carried away by glory. He was still aware of the drawbacks caused by his illness that progressed with each day, so he wrote about it to the French king. It is not fitting that a hand so weak as mine should hold power when fear of Arab aggression daily presses upon the holy city, and when my sickness increases, the enemy's daring. Baldwin's supporters were aware that his reign was precarious. Raymond of Tripoli, in particular, was a prominent opponent. In 1180, he, along with Baldwin's regent, Reynold of Chatillon, made an attempt to control the succession by proposing Baldwin of Ibelin as a new spouse for Baldwin's sister, Sibylla. The king had been seeking a new husband for Sibylla since the death of William Longsword a year earlier. While Baldwin was willing to step down, he did not appreciate having the decision forced upon him. Eventually, he chose Guy of Lusignan for Sibylla, thwarting Raymond and Reynold's plot, thus proving his political savvy. Baldwin showed his power by forbidding Raymond from entering the Kingdom of Jerusalem and appointing his new brother-in-law, Guy of Lusignan, as the new regent. Sultan Saladin took advantage of the internal disputes among the Crusaders. When his truce with Baldwin ended in 1182, Saladin launched an attack on the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Despite his poor health, the Leper King rallied his vassals to defend against the Arab invaders. In the intense heat of the Battle of Le Forbalet, the ailing king led his outnumbered troops to victory, demonstrating his steadfast leadership in both politics and warfare. The pressures of kingship, coupled with his debilitating disease, were taking a severe toll on Baldwin. By 1183, he had lost feeling in his arms and legs, became unable to walk unassisted, and was transported in a litter. His facial disfigurement progressed to the point where he could no longer blink, resulting in corneal dryness and blindness. Amidst all this, he contracted a serious fever that year, miraculously surviving it. As Baldwin's health continued to deteriorate, Guy of Lusignan began to act independently, often without the king's consent. This behavior, along with Saladin's siege on Kerak, forced Baldwin to assert his authority. He dismissed Guy from the regency, assumed total control of his kingdom, and named Sybil's 5-year-old son, also named Baldwin, as his co-king. Despite being blind and immobile, the Leper King led an army to confront Saladin. His remarkable leadership inspired everyone, including the recently dismissed Guy, to respond to his call to arms. When Saladin learned of the approaching Frankish force, he lifted the siege of Kerak and retreated to Egypt. Sadly, Baldwin's extraordinary determination and charisma could not overcome his deteriorating health. In 1185, he appointed Raymond of Tripoli as regent, ensuring his nephew's succession to the throne. However, shortly after, he contracted another fever, which his weakened body could not resist. Baldwin, the Leper King, died in May 1185 at the age of 25. Despite facing countless adversities, he successfully preserved the king's unity and integrity during his reign, a testament to his exceptional leadership and willpower. His death marked a significant loss for the kingdom, and its subsequent downfall after his demise highlighted his remarkable governance. Baldwin was succeeded by his nephew, King Baldwin V, who unfortunately passed away in 1186. His mother, Sybil, inherited the throne and handed it over to her husband, Guy of Lusignan, Incompetent as a ruler, Guy could not fend off Saladin's next invasion, leading to a crushing defeat at the Battle of Hattin in 1187. By year's end, the entire Crusader kingdom had collapsed, and the holy city of Jerusalem fell to Sultan Saladin on October 2nd. Despite his tragically short life marked by relentless challenges, Baldwin IV's legacy as a remarkable king endures. He successfully weathered invasions, internal opposition, and a debilitating illness, earning him the love and respect of his people. His memory as the Leper King, one of the most significant Crusader kings, lives on.